So I'm glad everybody's having a good time. This is not usually my stand-up crowd. So I kind of like the just had your morning coffee crowd and not the just had my fifth whiskey crowd. So this will be great. I actually brought my mom to a stand-up show I did in Austin. Just my mom here, she's here today. And we drove there together and then we left in separate cars. Because she thought my comedy was very inappropriate, which, you know, the late night stuff is, so don't worry, parents who brought your children today. But my mom told me, she sort of coached me after that last time, and she said, you know, you should really do more clean comedy, you know, like really good comedians, like Bill Cosby. Now, granted, this was before this whole scandal became national, but I always find that really comical that I should be more like Bill Cosby. So, you know, this whole concert this morning is about things that are north of ordinary. So, you know, Texas is very familiar with things that are north of ordinary, like the towns that they name, or the names they use to name towns. So, like Gun Barrel City is one of these popular, really odd Texas names. Two others that you might not be familiar with are Okra, Texas, and Ding Dong, Texas. These are two actual names of towns in Texas. So, like, can you imagine putting Ding Dong, Texas on your resume? That would be quite odd, I think. The name stemmed from a joke, you know, not unlike the name Trump. That could be like cold or hot, cold or hot, depending on who's in the crowd. You know, so we tell stories for lots of different reasons, and I like to tell stories to reclaim my history. I identify as Tejana. My dad is from Mexico. You know, I have a very unique way of seeing the world as someone who's Mexican American. I have a lot of people who say, you know, you don't do the traditional Mexican stuff, but you know, traditional Mexican stuff for me is very vaquero. It's very country. My dad came from Mexico, and you know, terms like rodeo and lasso, like those are Spanish words. Those came from Mexico. Our cowboys are not the Hollywood cowboys, the John Waynes that, you know, we have in our minds. In my history, my ancestors, they were all black and brown cowboys. You know, like these are people coming in, working with their hands. It was very much a way of life and not a hobby. You know, like unlike being a tiger mom or a gigolo. Any gigolos in here? No? Okay, not a gigolo kind of crowd. Okay. So, you know, like, that was my identity. And so, how many of y'all identify as Mexican American, Chicano, Tejano? In here, okay? Okay, yeah, okay, so maybe y'all will identify with some of these things. So, you know, this like traditional Mexican, I don't know what that means really, but for me, it means like, you know, having a goat bleed out on a tree at your 5-year-old birthday party. You know, like, cabrito is really good for birthday parties. But also, like, you've probably had sexual relations totally ruined for you by watching somebody or participating in going elbows deep into a cow's vagina to pull out a baby calf. So, you know, I used to show horses, I, you know, raised cattle, I did all of this stuff, and this was a part of our culture. So we were very, very country, and, you know, and that's a part of my history I love to reclaim, and it's a great part of my identity. Another part of my identity is I am a mom. I am mostly filled with a lot of caffeine, often alcohol, and some sadness. But I do have joy when I can pee by myself and shower without tiny spectators. So that's like really when I find joy, is like a 30-minute hot shower. That's super fantastic. But I did become quite annoying when I became a parent. It used to always annoy me. I would, you know, it's the parental nagging, right? Like, and now I'm that person. So, you know, when I used to have friends that would come up to me and say like, you know, my foot hurts, I'd be like, okay, sorry, bro, like, hope that works out for you. Okay. And then now when somebody comes up and says like, oh, my foot hurts, I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, what happened? Did your friends push you? Like, you should find more friends. You should go put some ice on it, put some heat on it, drink more water. And it's like, what am I doing with my life? Like, no one even asked for that kind of advice. I am that annoying person now. And it's okay. I'm perfectly fine with that. Except that, I have 2 children now. So I have a 7-year-old and a 17-month-old. And I, don't want any children anytime soon. And so I went to my gynecologist to talk about birth control options. And the birth control I had chosen, she said, had some side effects. She wanted to go over them with me. She said you could gain weight, be bloated, you might have red splotches on your skin, you could have mood swings, irregular bleeding, and I'm listening to all this stuff, and then I found out and figured out how birth control actually works. It makes you look so disgusting that not even your partner will have intimate relationships with you. So I figured out how it works. That was super fantastic for me. So, I'm not only a mother, but I'm a PhD student. And that's super challenging. But I'm in women's studies, getting my PhD in women's studies. And we have the National Women's Studies Association that we usually go to every year. So it's an academic conference for women's studies scholars to talk about research and all sorts of other things. But it's very, very inclusive, very gender fluid. So as I'm going to the conference, the story will actually make any of you in the audience feel better if you are in these conversations about whiteness and privilege and identity shifts, and which seem to be very, kind of popular in media right now. You'll appreciate this story, right? Coming from a women's studies scholar. So I show up at the conference, and all of their bathrooms are gender neutral. They've covered up every sign in the convention center and said, this is a gender neutral space. So I'm a women's studies scholar. Like in theory, I'm like, this is awesome. Like, cool, I'm with my people. So I'm walking up and I approach a bathroom and I'm trying to figure out which one is the women's. So the thought experiment, I already failed. Like, just haven't even walked in one. And I'm like, okay, all right. So like I'm shaking it off, like, okay. So I pick one and I walk in, and it's the men's bathroom. And I almost go out, and I'm like, okay, nope, I'm like such a professional, I can do this. So I walk in, and I feel awkward, right? Because in theory, lots of things make sense. But when you practice it and you actually like go and experience it, we have to fight all these things, right, that are ingrained in us. And so I'm walking in the bathroom, and there is a male-presenting individual peeing in the urinal on the wall. I'm like, this is, like, I'm totally cool with this. I think I don't feel awkward at all. So I walk by, and any normal person would have just walked by and gone into a stall. This person is not bothering me at all. But I walk by, and I slap him on the back. I'm like, you're doing a great job peeing there, bro. And then I walk by and then sit in the stall, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm never coming out ever in like all the hours of all the days. I felt like an idiot. And this should really make any of you feel better about like how awkward this stuff like plays out. It doesn't mean that it's not something we shouldn't do. It's just like some of this stuff that we deal with is so difficult and so hard to fight that even someone who's a women's studies scholar like is super awkward and weird with all of these things, right? And so I did not see that person. I looked for them like a hawk that I could avoid them at any point in the conference. But so this stuff sort of happens. But being a PhD student is really hard. A lot of people say like, oh my gosh, you're so smart and like, you know so many things. And that's actually not what happens in a PhD program. They take perfectly wonderful and amazing smart people that are already smart, and then they feed them a bunch of high theory and make them feel like totally uncomfortable with how the world works and like how everything runs. And they make you more confused about how everything is in the world. And then you feel like a complete failure, and then they do it again to you when you try to work for tenure. This is how being a PhD student works. I can actually, to this day, not answer yes or no to any question. Like, you could be like, do burgers sound good? And I'm like, what really are burgers? It's like, no, just tell me yes or no. Like, what's the matter with you? Like, that's what happens to you. So I thought what I would do is just give you like a visual idea of what it's like to be a PhD student. This is actually like from start to finish, from once I began to where I am now. I'm almost graduated.